Part 44. Adorable Baby, The Miracle Doctor is So Awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 431. Kui Yu and Xiao Wa were both seriously injured by the Huanhuo rat and fell to the ground not knowing whether they were alive or dead. Shen Yizi tried his best to kill the Huanhuo rat, but he himself was at the end of his crossbow and could barely hold himself up by leaning on the handle of the hammer. Nearly fell down several times. Where she stood was only a few steps away from the magma pool. Seeing this, Zhao Fulan could no longer bear it. She walked out of the darkness, stepped forward and pulled off the jade plaque hanging from her waist. Shen Yizi's expression suddenly changed when he saw her. Zhao Fulan. Give me back the jade token. I want to reach out and it back. Zhao Fulan took a step back lightly, holding the jade card in his hand to play with it. When he saw that it only had 10,000 contribution points, a trace of disdain flashed in his eyes, and he was too lazy to let her transfer the contribution points to him. He raised his hand and went to throw it into a pool of magma. Shen Yizi's face, which had already lost a lot of blood, became increasingly pale. Zhao Fulan's eyes were full of joy, and he raised his foot and kicked her hard into the magma pool. Looking at Shen Yizi's frightened expression of struggling but unable to control himself from falling, she stood on the shore and admired it quietly. Shen Yizi, I really want to thank you for helping me kill that fire rat. You can go in peace, these fire lotuses are all mine. However, the moment Shen Yizi came into contact with the magma pool, her figure suddenly disappeared without a trace, as did those fire lotuses. Zhao Fulan's heart sank. Before he could react, a heavy push came from behind. Don't want dash. She wanted to summon the jade token, crush it and get out of here. However, the storage bag originally hanging on the waist was missing. The panic of annihilation seized her heart, and the next moment, her face came into close contact with the surging magma. Shen Yizi stood on the shore and watched coldly as her figure was swallowed by the magma. Everything that happened before was just an illusion she had set up. There were no fire lotuses or fire rats in this cave, and the fight didn't even exist. She and Kui Yu had been standing aside in silence. This illusion was specially created for Zhao Fulan, and he was sure that she would get into trouble. Facts have proved that it is indeed the case. Shen Yizi looked at the storage bag that he had torn off from Zhao Fulan. He didn't bother to see what was in it and just threw it into the space. Let's go. When she turned around, she caught a glimpse of something in the magma pool behind her, but after looking for a while, she found nothing unusual. No matter how lucky Zhao Fulan is, she still can't climb out of the magma pool. Asterisk. Beyond the volcano is a jungle so dense that no sunlight can be seen. Deep in the jungle, hanging from a large tree forming a forest, was a huge beehive, covering an area of hundreds of square meters, like a big house. Countless bees move in and out of the hive. That bee is as big as a loon bird and is covered in 5 colors. It does not make a buzzing sound like ordinary bees, but makes a clear and loud sound like a loon and phoenix. It is the loon bee. Suddenly, the hive fell from the tree. Before the bees inside could fly out, the hive completely disappeared. Those loon wasps staying outside were stunned for a moment, and then rushed towards the only alien within 100 meters, the man in black clothes standing on the branch. This man is none other than Gu Switting. The loon beehive was taken into the chaotic space by him. Shen Yizi also knew that he was looking for the honeybee. He recognized a honeybee he saw in the forest before, followed it to the location of the hive, and used the space blade to cut the entire hive and branches. Separate and cut. If Ji knew that he had found Luan bee queen honey, he would definitely be very happy, right? Gu Switting had no intention of staying too long, and casually cast a lightning technique. The flying bees were instantly burned to death by the electricity, and fell from the air with a shudder. He took one step forward, and his body disappeared into the void without a trace. Asterisk. Shenyazi and Kuiyu were walking carefully in the jungle when they suddenly heard a scream. When they rushed over, they saw a beauty wrapped tightly in spider silk, with only her head exposed. The beauty looked at the two of them with tears streaming down her face, her eyes clearly conveying the message, "Come and save me." Kuiyu became anxious when she saw her. "Sisters Hizzy, let's go rescue people quickly." Shenyazi pulled her and said, "This woman's appearance is too strange. Let Little Frog go over and explore her first." As a result, after this investigation, it was discovered that the beauty clearly had a spider body. If they move forward impulsively, they may get tangled in the beauty spider's silk and become her belly wrapping. Seeing that the conspiracy was exposed, the beauty spider no longer hid its head and tail, and jumped out from behind the grass, landing in front of the two of them with a bang, and snow-white spider silk as thick as a little finger spewed out. The beauty spider, if you just look at the beautiful head, it looks so enchanting and beautiful, but if you look at the part below the head, you can't help but make your hair stand on end. Shenyazi has long read in books that the beauty spider has a habit of using its head as a bait to lure people into being deceived. If it's a man, it will act like a beautiful woman crying, attracting men who are accustomed to showing affection to women to come forward. If it is a woman, take advantage of the soft-hearted nature of women and disguise yourself as a victim captured by a monster. At that time, when she was reading the book, she felt that this beauty spider was really a strange flower in the world of monsters and beasts. She didn't expect that she would experience it in person now. Faced with the spider threads coming from all directions, she was not afraid. Real fire burst out from her hands, turned into a phoenix and flew around in a circle, burning all the spider threads. "Let Little Frog guard Kuiyu." She picked up the hammer and flew forward to fight the beauty spider at close range. With the phoenix real fire protecting her body, she is not afraid of spider silk. Apart from the spider silk, the beauty spider's 8 thick and pointed legs are more terrifying. If you are accidentally poked, you may be pierced through. Shenyazi pretended to be invincible, blocking the star breaker in front of her and retreating. In fact, she secretly used Shenyushi to set up a formation. When the formation was completely arranged, she whispered, "Start." After the formation was completed, the beauty spider's huge body sank instantly, as if Mount Tai was pressing down on it, and it could no longer be as flexible as before. Actually, Shenyazi was confident that he could defeat this beauty spider without any formation, but he was afraid that it would not be able to defeat it and run away. The beauty spider has 8 legs, so she can't catch up when it runs. That's why she showed her weakness to the enemy first, making it think that she was a fat piece of meat that could reach her mouth with just a little effort, and pursued her relentlessly. Now, the beauty spider trapped in the formation seems to be playing in slow motion every time it moves. How can it still pose a threat to her? Shenyazi picked up a hammer and jumped on its back. After a few hammer blows, the beauty spider turned into a dead spider. 480 new contribution points have been added to the Jade card. This beauty spider is worth a lot of money. It would be great if a group could come. Of course, she just thought about it, she wouldn't be able to handle a group of people. The two of them continued on their way. In the evening, the two of them were repairing on a slope. After a simple meal, the two of them went behind the tree to solve important life issues. Shenyazi glanced at him inadvertently, his eyes were fixed and he couldn't move away. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 432. Sisters Hizzy, what's wrong? Shenyazi hurriedly covered her mouth, fearing that she would scare away the little thing not far away. Kuiyu followed her gaze and saw a bee as big as a bird collecting nectar from a flower. The flower was as big as a basin, and most of the bee's body was buried in it. Its wings are colorful and gorgeous, as if they are plated with the glow of the sky. Sisters Hizzy, is this a bee? Kuiyu was a little afraid to recognize it and asked in a low voice. Looking at it, It looks like a bee, but it is very different from an ordinary bee. Shenyazi said and started educating her. This is the Luen bee. The honey it produces is crystal clear and green. If you eat it for a long time, you can live longer. It looks like a child. After hearing this, Kuiyu couldn't help but yearn for Luen honey. Then if we follow this Luen bee, can we find its nest? Smart Shenyazi praised her. Shenyazi was really surprised to find Luen bee here, but it was already dark now. Although it was only 4 or 5 o'clock, it always got dark early in the jungle, and the jungle at night was countless times more dangerous than during the day. So it's not a good time to look for the Luen bee hive. Shenyazi caught the Luen bee and sent it into the space. Early the next morning, he was released again. Originally, I pointed it to lead the way, but unexpectedly, after the Luen bee came out, it kept circling around her and refused to fly away. What's the situation? It didn't go back all night yesterday. Now that it's free, shouldn't it be eager to return home? Shenyazi seemed to understand something when he thought that when he found it in the space, it was flying around collecting nectar among the flowers. I guess it was fascinated by the large area of flowers and plants in the space and didn't want to move. Hurry up, a cluster of bright red flames emerged from Shenyazi's fingertips, trying to burn its wings. The Luen bee was so busy that it flew forward. However, it still did not change its nature of collecting honey. Along the way, it would pick flowers and stamens from time to time. Shenyazi wanted to catch it again and let it lead the way directly. But the Luen bee's intelligence is really low, and it only relies on instinct. Even if she threatens to die, it probably won't be able to figure out the situation. Can only follow behind helplessly. Fortunately, Luen bee still remembered to go home, and finally led them to a giant tree. There were many bees gathered under the tree. They flew up and down around the big tree, making rapid calls. Judging from their reactions and the remaining traces of the hive on the branches, this is indeed the place where the bees built their nests, but they seemed to have arrived too late. The hive was completely gone. Shenyazi walked over with a frown and looked at the dead wasps scattered under the tree. Each one was burnt black, as if struck by lightning. She picked one up, with a trace of aura still remaining on it. It seems that someone got there first. We are a step too late, Shenyazi sighed. Finally we found the whereabouts of the Luen bee, but we missed it. It would be nice to know who took the hive away. Shenyazi injected spiritual energy into the turtle shell to form a cover around his body to avoid being attacked by the bees. They lost their home and it was the time when they became violent. If she passed by at this time, it would be easy for them to become their target. Sure enough, as soon as she arrived under the tree, the group of bees pointed their sharp beaks at her. However, the turtle shell is very strong, and Luen wasp's tail needle cannot break through the defense at all, so naturally it cannot hurt her inside. Shenyazi arrived at the tree smoothly and checked the situation at the break of the hive. The incision is very neat, but it does not look like it was made by a weapon such as a sword. Is it a wind blade? When leaving, Shenyazi collected all the swarms of bees into the space. Although the hive is gone, with these Luen bees, maybe we can build another one. Royal jelly will be available by then. Asterisk. In a volcano. In a wide cave. The surging magma suddenly boiled, and then, a slender figure soared out. The clothes on her body were melted by the magma, and a layer of magma flowed on the surface of her body. The layer of magma seemed to have become her second skin. She suddenly opened her eyes, and her eyes were red. The lava slowly receded from her face, revealing a horribly disfigured face. This person is Zhao Fulan, who was pushed down by Shenyazi earlier. She touched her face, her eyes bleeding with hatred. Shenyazi. She chewed the name in her heart, her eyes seemed to be quenched with poison. She wanted to skin the man, cramp him, and cut him into pieces. If it weren't for the fact that there happened to be a fire bred under the magma, and her potential exploded at the moment of life and death, and merged with this fire, she would have been melted by the magma right now, and no dregs would be left. Thinking of the pain he had suffered previously, Zhao Fulan hated Shenyazi deeply. "Ah, Shenyazi, go to hell." A voice full of anger and hatred echoed in the cave. The fire in her body surged instantly, causing the originally calm volcano to erupt. Boom! 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 On the top of the mountain, streams of magma rose into the sky, exploding into a huge cloud of smoke. The earth shook and the mountains shook. Huge cracks in the ground have opened up in some places. Many people and monsters accidentally fell into it. Shenyazi and Kuiyu, who were on their way, heard the noise in the distance and couldn't help but look there. Why did the volcano suddenly erupt? Kuiyu asked herself. Shenyazi couldn't answer either. Let's go, time is running out. They spent a lot of time looking for the beehive before, so they focused on rushing along the way and deliberately avoided the monsters. If they couldn't avoid it, they would fight quickly. Finally, 3 days later, the two of them walked through the jungle and arrived at the snowfield in the center of the secret realm. In the center of the snowfield, there stands a snow peak that reaches straight into the sky. Penglay Pavilion is located on the mountainside. As soon as you look up, you can see the huge building shrouded in colorful light, looming in the clouds, and full of fairy spirit. It is as misty as the Nine Heavens fairy palace. The two of them looked up and stared at each other for a while, then looked back and were about to step into the snowy field. A surprised voice sounded from behind them, "You are Sisters Hizzy." "It is Kuiyu." There was another person beside him, it was Zhonwuki. The two parties were overjoyed to see each other. Kuiyu and Kuiying even hugged each other for a while before letting go. "Brother, how much have you contributed?" Kuiying handed over his jade token and said, "Did you not save much?" "I have more than 30,000. I will transfer some to you." More than 30,000, which can be said to be a lot, but it also depends on who you compare with. Kuiyu raised her chin as soon as she heard this, with a proud look on her face. "I don't need you to transfer it to me. I have gained many more contribution points from Sisters Hizzy than you." Kuiying took the jade token from her and looked at it. His eyes widened immediately, and he couldn't believe the numbers he saw. 113,650. Nearly 4 times as big as yourself. Looking at his shocked expression, Kuiyu's show-off mood was greatly satisfied. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 433. Haha, actually, I'm taking advantage of Sisters Hizzy. Come on, I'll transfer some to you, so that when you enter Penglay Pavilion, you won't be able to exchange for anything good. Seeing that the contribution points in the jade card suddenly increased to more than 70,000, Kuiying inexplicably felt like he was hugging his sister's golden thigh. Kuiyu chattered again about her experiences along the way, how to earn contribution points with delicious food, cooking delicious food in different ways every day, and having a big demon to help earn contribution points. Kuiyu's heart was filled with excitement and envy when she heard this. Comparing the two sides, he felt that his experience was as dull as boiled water. Sisters Hizzy, I want to eat the food you cooked. Kuiying blinked, pleading. This boy is acting coquettishly just to eat. Zhonwuki also looked over expectantly. Facing two pairs of longing eyes, what can Shenyazi say? Of course I agreed. At the junction of the snowfield and the jungle, a few people found a sheltered position from the wind, sat down and had a big meal, chatting while eating, talking about their experiences in the secret realm. After eating, it was already afternoon. Before setting off, Zhonwuki said, I heard that there is a kind of snow ant in the snowfield. Its whole body is white and blends with the ice and snow. It is difficult to find. If you are bitten by the snow ant, all the blood in your body will be frozen, so we go in after that, be careful. Upon hearing this, Shen Yizi thought for a while, took out the sky boat and turned it into a small boat with a length of 2 or 3 meters. Then he tied a rope to the sky boat and put it on the big frog. It can be regarded as a modified version of sled. We don't have to walk, we can sit on the boat and let the little frog pull us in. Ah, great, I haven't been on a sleigh yet. Kuiyu ran over excitedly and was the first to get on the boat. The seat on the boat is relatively small, with enough room for 4 people to sit there. Shen Yizi and Kuiyu sit on one side, and Kuiyu and Zhongyuki sit on the opposite side. Shen Yizi affixed all the diamond talisman, invisibility talisman, and breath condensation talisman to Little Frog, raised the protective cover of the Tianzhou, and also affixed the invisibility talisman. In an instant, the entire group of people disappeared on the spot. Let's go, Shen Yizi ordered Zioa. The little frog jumped up and led the sky boat to slide quickly on the snow. Oh ha ha, Kuiyu couldn't help cheering. Kui Ying kicked her quickly and said, Jing Jing, what if we attract a monster? Kui Yu stuck out her tongue and quickly closed her mouth. Shen Yizi smiled and said, it's okay, I set up a sound barrier so that no sound inside the ship can be heard from outside. Kui Yu hugged her arm and shrugged her nose proudly at Kui Yu. Kui Ye sighed helplessly, feeling that Yu had become more and more lawless during these days with Sisters Hizzy. But this just proves that Sisters Hizzy takes good care of her. The snow-capped mountain where Penglay Pavilion is located seems to be not far away, but when I actually ran, it didn't get any closer for a long time. Seeing that the moon had already hung in the sky, Shen Yizi said to the other 3 people, we will take turns guarding. I will come first. You can take a nap or practice. Zhongyuki said, I should come first. Shen Yizi didn't argue with him, okay, then let's follow the order of you, me, then Ali and you and each of us will keep watch for 2 hours. Everyone has no opinion. Kui Yu held Shen Yizi's arm and fell asleep on her shoulder. Kui Ying chose to practice. Shen Yizi said to Zhongyuki, if anything happens, call me immediately. Good. Shen Yizi closed his eyes and meditated. Even though it was night, there was snow everywhere. The moonlight shone on the crystal snow, and the light was reflected, making the surrounding area bright and not dim at all. There is not much difference between day and night in the snow field. It's just that the night is extraordinarily quiet. The smallest sound is infinitely amplified. I don't know when it started snowing again in the sky. Snowflakes fell, and a lot of them fell on the sky boat. But as soon as the snowflakes came into contact with the barrier, they seemed to have fallen into the water and disappeared. 2 hours passed safely, and before the clock came to call, Shen Yizi opened his eyes. She set the timer on the watch on her hand. When the time was up, the watch vibrated slightly. She checked the time and saw it was only a little over 10. Are you hungry? Do you want some midnight snack? Zhongyuki responded with a smile, okay, I got what I asked for. Shen Yizi asked Little Frog to find a sheltered place to stop, placed a small square table in the gap between the 2 of them, and took out 2 bowls of hot wontons, a plate of fried cuttlefish balls, and a plate of pickled radish. Strip. The portions are small, but the taste is delicious. There are dried shrimps and chopped green onion in the wonton soup. It is fragrant and hot, with a thin skin and enough filling. Use a spoon to scoop it up, take 1 bite at a time, and swallow the wontons with the soup. The taste is incredible. Kui Yu, who was sleeping soundly, and Kui Ying, who was immersed in cultivation, were both woken up by the incense. Sisters Hizzy, you and brother Zhong actually added extra food behind our backs, I want to eat too. Kui Yu woke up immediately when she saw the food. Shen Yizi then took out 2 more bowls, and the 4 of them sat next to each other on the small boat, enjoying a bowl of hot wontons. The snow falls quietly, and the surrounding fields are cold. Only this small world is full of warmth. The deeper they go into the snow field, the more corpses the four of them see. Snow crows hovered over the corpse. After confirming that there was no danger, they flew down to peck at the corpse. Everyone has a jade tablet in their hand, and these people obviously died before they could even crush the jade tablet. Zhonwuqi's voice was a little heavy. I guess he was bitten by snow ants. Once bitten, the blood in the whole body freezes and the whole person becomes a popsicle. How can one crush the jade plaque? Shen Yizi originally thought that the setting of the jade tablet in the secret realm was very humane. At least there was a way out. When the 1-month period came, the mortality rate should not be too high. But now she couldn't help but think deeply. Outside the snow field, the existence of the jade tablet gives everyone who enters the secret realm something to rely on, and their original vigilance and caution will inevitably be reduced. When they enter the snow field and Penglay Pavilion is within easy reach, everyone will be more anxious. However, the seemingly peaceful snow field is actually a place full of dangers. The inconspicuous snow ants blended into the snow can easily kill people without being visible. The person behind the design of this game seems to be benevolent, but in fact he has sinister intentions. However, this is a secret realm where crises and opportunities coexist. Everyone should be prepared for their own fate the moment they step into this place. Whether the outcome is good or bad. 2 days later, Snow Mountain arrived. The 4 people got off the sky boat. Shen Yizi put the sky boat away, fed the little frog some spirit beast pills, touched its cold head, and let it return to the space to rest. From the foot of the mountain going up, there are steps made of ice and snow, with no end in sight. It's bone-chilling, chilly, and makes you feel cold just looking at it. This is the road leading to Penglay Pavilion. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 434. To the 4 people's surprise, many figures were frozen on the steps. Those people were like ice sculptures, standing motionless and silent on the steps, obviously dead. Shen Yizi walked over and tried to step on the steps. As soon as his feet came into contact with the steps, a bone-chilling chill invaded his bones, making him feel like he had fallen into an ice cellar. She quickly started to run her exercises to let the spiritual power flow throughout her body. In this way, it feels better. The phoenix true fire in the Danshan seemed to feel threatened and became active. A warm true power spread from the Danshan to all the limbs. So comfortable. The whole person feels like soaking in a hot spring. I can no longer feel the slightest chill. But others are not as lucky as her. After all, not everyone can possess a strange fire like the phoenix true fire. They can only run their skills like she did before and use spiritual power to isolate themselves from the cold air. But the spiritual power in a monk's body is limited after all. Once the supply speed cannot keep up with the consumption speed, and the cold air invades the bone marrow, he will probably end up like an ice sculpture. This is true for monks, not to mention mortals with no spiritual power. Shen Yizi felt a chill in his heart as he looked at the figures frozen on the steps. At this moment, a fiery attack came from behind. Shen Yizi dodged to avoid it, but more fireballs hit her like meteors. She swung the star breaker and shielded her body from the wind, scattering all the fireballs that came towards her. At this time, I had time to see who the sneak attacker was. The man's whole body was wrapped tightly, only a pair of eyes that were glowing red and filled with hatred could overflow. As soon as Shen Yizi met those eyes, a name appeared in his heart. Zhao Fulan. Unexpectedly, she was very lucky. Even if she fell into the magma, she could still come out. And the strength is much stronger than before. It seems that no spiritual power is needed to release the fireball, and the attack is very huge. But Shen Yizi was not panicked. If she could kill Zhao Fulan once, she could kill her 2 or 3 times. stopped Kuiyu and the others who were about to come forward to help her. She stepped on the clouds and approached Zhao Fulan quickly and erratically. Kuiyu watched the fight between the two worriedly. Brother Zhong, don't we really go up and help sisters Hizzy? Zhong Wuki waved his sleeves to brush aside a fireball that was coming towards him, and led the two of them farther away. His voice had the power to soothe people, but what he said was depressing. In the past, we only got in the way and let Miss Shen disappear. You can give your best, so don't go over and cause trouble for her. It hurts my heart. Kuiyu thought about the strength gap between herself and sisters Hizzy, and sighed depressedly, deciding that she must practice hard in the future and never fish in water again, otherwise she wouldn't be able to help sisters Hizzy when she fights with others. I can stand aside and look anxious. During the game, Zhao Fulan's attacks became more and more urgent, and he gradually lost his control. When she first merged with the flames, she felt that she had become unprecedentedly powerful. Her hatred for Shen Yizi made her unable to wait for a moment. She just wanted to find her immediately, which made her miserable. So there is no time to calm down and meditate to warm up the fire. The fire was born from the hot and violent magma, and it was extremely difficult to suppress it. If it were not still in its infancy, Zhao Fulan would never have been able to successfully fuse with it. After the fusion, all she needs to do is to try her best to make the flames docile, stay in her danshan, and completely subdue them. However, now that she has omitted this step, the fire in her body becomes more and more violent, always wanting to rush out, and the pain of being melted by magma comes again. Coupled with the fact that Shenyi was confused for a long time, her whole body became frantic. Kill her! Kill her! With this thought in his mind, Zhao Fulan waved his hand and turned into a fire dragon, rushing towards Shen Yizi. Shen Yizi also saw something was wrong with Zhao Fulan, so he changed his strategy and instead of confronting her, he flew a kite and tried his best to dodge. If she guessed correctly, Zhao Fulan must have had some adventure in the magma, and her strength greatly increased. However, no matter how much it increased, the spiritual power in her body could not be infinite. With the way she is playing, her spiritual power will definitely not last long. Just get through this period of time. Zhao Fulan Su was also aware of this, and he bit Shenyi even more and refused to let go, almost as if he wanted to drag her to death with him. With a sound of boom, 4 walls of fire suddenly rose up around Shen Yizi, trapping her inside. Zhao Fulan tightened his fingers, and the wall of fire quickly closed in. Shen Yizi, let me see where you hide now. Even in this ice and snow, the wall of fire was emitting blazing heat, and Shen Yizi felt like his skin was being burned to the point of cracking. She quickly held up the aura shield outside her body, but the aura shield only lasted less than a second before it burst. Seeing this scene, Zhao Fulan smiled happily and waited to see her burn to ashes by the strange fire. Unexpectedly, the scene she expected did not appear. The moment the flames approached, a phoenix composed entirely of flames rushed out from Shen Yizi's danshan, and it uttered an exciting and clear phoenix cry at Zhao Fulan like a king looming over the world. At the sound of the phoenix, Zhao Fulan's arrogance suddenly dropped several degrees. If Yanhuo is in the infant stage that has not yet fully developed, then the phoenix true fire is in the embryonic stage. The roar just now was just a bluff based on its high rank. It does not yet have the strength to extinguish Yanhuo in one fell swoop. Shen Yizi also knew this. Before Zhao Fulan noticed it, he flicked water droplets from his fingertips and shot them toward the flames around him. Zhao Fulan was originally confused by the fact that she also had strange fire, but when she saw that she actually tried to use a few small water droplets to extinguish her fire wall, she felt ridiculous. However, the next moment, the smile on her face froze. Because that small drop of water, which seemed inconspicuous to her, actually extinguished her wall of fire. What Shen Yizi brought out was the heavy water brought from Xiahao, which was specially designed to defeat strange fire. Heavy water is indeed easy to use, but every drop is used and it cannot be recycled. Shenyazi felt very painful. So she didn't take it out before. The wall of fire around him had gone, and Shenyazi stepped forward with cloud traces under his feet, and in an instant he was in front of Zhao Fulan. Zhao Fulan was shocked and raised his hand to wave out a fire dragon, but the fire dragon he swung was pitifully small and weak. Before he could get close to Shenyazi's body, it was extinguished with a pop. The next moment, her whole body was thrown away by the Starbreaker hammer, and she fell heavily to the ground, spitting out a mouthful of blood. Then she felt a cold feeling in her stomach. When she lowered her head, she saw that a hole had been opened in her stomach by the flames. After Yanhuo rushed out, he left as fast as a shooting star. Unfortunately, before he could get very far, he was caught by Phoenix Zhenhuo, who was waiting for him, and swallowed it. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 435. Although Yanhuo is not as good as it, its strength is much stronger. How can you be willing to be swallowed by it? Immediately, it violently rushed into Phoenix's stomach. For a time, two flames were fighting fiercely in the air. Shenyazi was watching nervously. Without noticing, Zhao Fulan actually used the teleportation talisman to open a space passage. Seeing that the space channel was about to close, she was powerless to stop it. At this moment, a black figure suddenly descended beside her, waving his hand to attack the space passage. Zhao Fulan, who originally thought he could leave safely, was instantly involved in space turbulence. His knees felt cold, a sharp pain came, and then he lost consciousness. Standing where he was, Shenyazi looked at the man next to him with surprise on his face. Gu Switting, why are you here? Gu Switting took her into his arms and tightened his arms, trying to embed her into his body. Taking a deep breath, he felt the subtle fragrance of her body, which made him feel extremely satisfied. The tip of his nose rubbed her ear. After I finished the things in my hands, I came to Qiandao Lake to look for you. It turned out that you had already entered the secret realm, so I came in too. After hearing this, Shenyazi felt sweet in his heart, as if sweet honey came out. Sisters Hizzy. Kui Yu ran over and saw her and Gu Switting separated, and winked at her. When he saw Gu Switting's appearance clearly, he couldn't help but exclaimed, "Wow, is this brother-in-law Gu? He really matches Sisters Hizzy very well." She had met Gu Switting many times when she was looking at Nian's photos and videos on the photo stone, and now she recognized him as soon as they met. Gu Switting was originally a little unhappy because of her interruption, but after hearing her call brother-in-law Gu, his unhappiness was immediately wiped away, and he even found this little girl very lovable. Kui Ying and Zhong Wuki, who were one step behind, also came over, and Shenyazi introduced them to both parties. When Gu Switting looked at Zhong Wuki, his eyes stayed for a moment longer. At this time, the battle of strange fires in mid-air finally came to an end. Phoenix True Fire was superior in skill and completely swallowed up the flames, but because it was not strong enough, it was like a small snake swallowing a big mouse, causing some indigestion. It will take a lot of time to refine. Otherwise, Yanhuo may make a comeback at any time. Phoenix True Fire plunged into Shenyazi's dungeon and went to digest food. A group of 5 people walked towards the stairs. Gu Switting held Shenyazi's hand and wrapped her hand tightly with his big palm. She raised her head and smiled at him. Her crystal eyes were bright and her red lips were charming, touching people's hearts. When she reached the bottom of the steps, Shenyazi turned around and looked at Kui Yu and Kui Ying's brother and sister. They were not very good at cultivation, and the cold air on the steps was so cold that it penetrated into the bones. She was a little worried that they wouldn't be able to bear it. Ali, why don't you just wait for us here? Kui Yu raised her head and glanced at the people frozen on the ice steps, and said obediently, "Well, my brother and I will wait for you here." Goose Whitting said in a deep voice, I'm afraid it won't work. Shen Yizi was still confused. After following his line of sight, his expression changed with horror. On the snow field, layers of snow surged over. If you look closely, it's not snow at all, but a colony of snow ants. It's coming here at a very fast speed. If you get caught by them, you may die in an instant. Shen Yizi quickly took out 5 Xianyanggan hand burners. The hand burners were no bigger than a child's hand. They were flat and smooth in shape without too many carvings. Each of them gave one to each person, and she also carried one in her arms. The hand stove is filled with water, and as long as it comes into contact with human skin, it will continuously generate heat. Hurry, get up. Soon after the group of people stepped onto the steps, the snow ants arrived at the foot of the mountain. However, they seemed to be afraid of the ice steps and stopped on the bottom step instead of going up. Seeing this, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Goose Whitting took out a thick robe from the space, wrapped Shen Yizi's whole body in it, stood on the lower step and tied the belt for her, but still felt that it was not enough. Zhizi, I will carry you up. Bar. He practices the Hunyuan Zhenjing, and he can absorb any spiritual energy of any type. Although the ice steps are cold, the ice-type spiritual energy is particularly strong. The skills in his body are running all the time, and the speed of absorption is even higher than the speed of consumption, so the current situation is nothing to him. But he was worried that she might not be able to bear it. Shen Yizi reached out his hand from the Y and put it against his neck. Do you feel it? My hand is warm, not cold at all. Not only does she have the Phoenix True Fire to protect her body, but the techniques she practices are also not picky about spiritual energy. Like him, her spiritual energy is not consumed, but actually increases. The cold air on the ice steps is not enough to pose a threat to her, and is even beneficial to her practice. What's more, she also carried a Xianyanggan hand stove in her arms. The hand stove radiates heat all the time, like a little sun. Goose Whitting stroked her face. Just tell me if you're tired. Okay. Shen Yizi smiled brightly and snuggled into his arms. Although it was indeed not cold, I just couldn't help but want to crawl into his arms. If Kuiyu and the others hadn't been watching, she might have let him carry her all the way up. Kuiyu and the other 2 people who had been watching the whole process felt like they were already full of dog food. Kuiyu looked at the 2 people close together and couldn't help but scream in her heart, sisters Hizi and brother-in-law Gu are so sweet. Thinking of Kuiyu, Shen Yizi turned around and asked, how do you feel? Can you still stand it? Kuiyu was smiling foolishly at the 2 of them. When she heard her cold question, she quickly looked away and jumped up. Sisters Hizi, the hand stove you gave me is so useful. My whole body is warm now, how can I not be able to bear it? Kui Ling and Zhong Wuqi also said it was no problem. Shen Yizi felt relieved when he saw that the expressions of the 3 of them were as usual and they did not look like they were trying to hold on. However, he still warned me, if you can't hold it any longer, you must tell me. She cared so much about others, and Goose Whitting immediately overturned the jealousy in her heart. He wrapped his arms around her waist, pulled her into his arms, and said against her ear, Zhizi, I'm hungry. Shen Yizi was forced to hang on him, which was actually equivalent to being carried up by him. I originally wanted to struggle, but when I heard that he was hungry, I hurriedly took out food from the space. It is a pancake that has been rolled into barbecued meat slices. When she was making food to earn contribution points, this kind of meatloaf, which was relatively filling, was the most popular. She made quite a few of them and had a lot left over in the end. It's just right to take it out and eat it now. Shen Yizi gave Kuiyu and the others 2 pieces each. Let me down, Shen Yizi said to Goose Whitting. Otherwise he wouldn't be able to spare time to eat. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 436. Goose Whitting didn't listen. Instead of putting her down, he hugged her even more thoroughly. Like holding a child, he held her hips with his arms, keeping her whole body close to him, and stared at her with his black eyes like paint. Feed me. Shenyazi caught a glimpse of Kuiyu covering her mouth and snickering from the corner of her eye. Zhonwuki and Kuiyu deliberately stayed away from the two of them and ate the cakes in their hands without looking away. Forget it, just hug her, they are the closest people. Shenyazi simply let go, holding Goose Whitting's neck with one hand, and feeding him a piece of cake with the other hand. Holding the person he misses most in his arms and eating the delicacies she feeds with his own hands, Goose Whitting's whole body exudes joy, and his eyes and eyebrows are filled with smiles. Seeing that he was eating happily, Shenyazi felt a little hungry and took a bite of the pancake. Just like that, the two of them shared one piece of cake, one bite at a time and one bite at a time. Although the cake was salty, both of them tasted the sweetness. Those sweet strands wrapped around the whole heart. After finishing the pancake, Shenyazi fed Goose Whitting a lot of other food. He didn't stop with some reluctance until he was full. Feeding is really an addictive thing. With their mouths free, the two chatted about their experiences in the secret realm. The snow-white and cold steps extend to the end of the site. After walking for a long time, the sense of time becomes blurred. It seemed like I had been walking for a long time, but looking at the time, it was only a few minutes. Shenyazi leaned on Goose Whitting's shoulder and looked back at the way he came. He was suddenly gripped by a feeling of loneliness and desolation. He couldn't help but hold him tighter and smell his scent deeply. Are you cold? Goose Whitting tightened his arms. Shenyazi shook his head and said, let me down. Aren't your hands sore? Zhizzy, do you think I'm not good enough? Goose Whitting held her earlobe in his mouth. The voice is hoarse and tender, but it also contains a hint of danger. Shenyazi had a sense of danger that if he nodded, he would fall into the abyss. How is that possible? I am willing to be held by you forever. Shenyazi felt his teeth aching as soon as he finished speaking. Goose Whitting laughed, and the laughter that came out of her chest was so loud that it tickled her ears. On the steps a few steps behind, Kuiyu hugged Kuiying's arm and almost handed over half of his weight to him. Looking at the endless ice steps, she felt sad in her heart. How long will it take to get there? No one can give her the answer. Zhonwuki said softly, it will always arrive. Yes, everything has an end and will eventually be reached. The higher you go up, the thicker the fog becomes on both sides. There is nothing but fog, just fog. Heaven and earth are silent. Fortunately, there were 5 of them in the group, so they could still talk to each other and have someone to rely on when they were tired. If you are alone, I am afraid that this consistent scenery and the silence that has not changed for thousands of years will drive you crazy. With the low temperature, food is increasingly needed to replenish calories. Shenyazi brought food out several times to replenish everyone. But the group did not stop, but ate while walking. When climbing a mountain, once you stop, it is difficult to continue going forward. Shenyazi was warmed up by the heat from Goose Whitting's body, and couldn't help but yawn. Go to sleep, and you'll be here when you wake up. Goose Whitting placed a passionate kiss on her forehead. Shenyazi said kissed him back on the chin, and quickly buried his head in his neck. Goose Whitting lifted her head up to make her pillow more comfortable. Kuiyu looked at it with envy. When will she meet such a man who puts her at the forefront of her heart and loves her? Kuiying pinched her nose and said, what are you thinking about? Stand up straight and walk well. Humph, my brother is the most annoying. Kuiyu had to rely on him. Zhonwuki, who was at the back, looked at the two couples in front and felt a faint sense of melancholy. Zhizzy, we're here. A soft call sounded in my ears. Shenyazi, who was sleeping soundly, thought he was lying on the bed at home and wanted to turn over and continue sleeping. But found that the body was imprisoned. A low and cheerful laughter sounded in my ears. Little lazy pig, Penglay Pavilion has arrived. Shenyazi slowly opened his eyes, and what he saw was a Adam's apple. Looking up, he saw that handsome and attractive face. She stared at him blankly. There was a red mark on her face from when she was sleeping, and her eyes were a little worried. She looked really cute. Goose Whitting was so moved that he rubbed her into his arms, held her face and kissed her several times. Later, it came to the two soft and sweet lips, twisting and turning deeply. Shenyazi grabbed his collar softly and responded to him obediently. Goose Whitting's eyes suddenly darkened, and he closed his eyes tightly. He held her in his arms for a while before suppressing the rolling desire. I am really shameless in public. A disdainful female voice came into my ears. Shenyazi looked up from Goose Whitting's arms and saw a 17 or 18-year-old woman with a pretty face standing not far away, looking at him. Seeing her looking over, the woman raised her chin, as if she was talking about you. Goose Whitting glanced over with a cold look. The woman looked frightened and she didn't dare to say anything. Kuiyu sneered, "You are the one who is really shameless, right? You have been staring at my brother-in-law Gu, and your charming eyes are almost out of the sky, thinking that no one knows what dirty thoughts you have. What a pity, you are too ugly, not even 1/10,000th as good as my sister's Hizzy. Brother-in-law Gu doesn't even bother to give you a look, so you can only say some mean words." The woman's face turned red when Kuiyu scolded her, "What are you talking about? Who stared at him? Who ogled him? Don't slander people with your mouth." After listening to the conversation between the two, Shenyazi finally understood the general idea. He glanced at Goose Whitting with a smile and touched his face. Tisk, tisk, this face is really attracting bees and butterflies. How old is he now? Kung Fu attracted a peach blossom. Goose Whitting held her hand down and defended himself. "Zhizzy, I belong to you alone, how can there be any love?" The woman looked at the interaction between the two and bit her lower lip, a deep jealousy flashing in her eyes. Shenyazi stretched out and jumped out of Goose Whitting's arms. "When I woke up, I felt really refreshed." "Sisters Hizzy, are you awake?" Kuiyu jumped up to her. Shenyazi touched her head and looked around. The place where they are standing is a huge square, with ice bricks under their feet, and a stone monument standing in the northwest. Penglay Pavilion is located at the northern end of the square. In addition to the 5 of them, there were only a few people in the square, scattered around. Kuiyu took her hand and came closer to her. "Sisters Hizzy, the woman we met just now was the one we met on the way." As soon as she saw Brother Gu, her eyes were glued to him and she couldn't pull them off. She deliberately pretended to be weak and fell at brother-in-law Gu's feet, but it was a pity that brother-in-law Gu didn't even look at her. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 437. When we got up, she kept staring at brother-in-law Gu, and she stared at you with all her might, as if she wanted to shoot you through. Kuiyu imitated gestures as she spoke, making Shenyazi laugh. Kui Yunhuang, the woman in Kuiyu's mouth, heard her blatantly arrange herself, so angry that her originally pretty face was distorted, and her appearance suddenly dropped several notches. Kuiyu pointed at her. "Sisters Hizzy, look at it, this is the expression she was glaring at you just now." Kui Yunhuang couldn't bear it any longer and raised his hand to wave an ice pick. The front end of the ice pick was sharp, wrapped in the cold air, and shot towards her at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, he came to the door in front of Kuiyu. Shenyazi pulled her and narrowly avoided it, the ice pick inserted diagonally into the ice bricks. I also knew that if Kuiyu had been shot just now, a hole in the ice would have been poked out of his head. Kui Yunhuang was obviously rushing to kill her. Kuiyu looked at the ice pick on the ground and held her chest in fear for a while. She didn't expect that the woman would hit her with a killer move. You were so angry that you wanted to kill someone after what I said. You are so vicious. Kui Yunhuang sneered, little sister, haven't your family taught you to keep your mouth shut outside? You are so arrogant. I guess it's because your family didn't teach you well. I can only teach you on their behalf. Kui Yu was furious. She said she could, but she even brought her parents and family with her. How disgusting. Besides, everything she said is true, okay. You don't have a tutor. Your whole family doesn't have a tutor. You ugly and poisonous woman. Ugly and poisonous. These two words really hurt Kui Yunhuang's lungs. She has never been scolded like this in her whole life. This little girl really needs a lesson. While she was planning another killing move, there was a commotion in the square. That stone tablet shows the font. Go and see what's written on it. I saw a colorful light flashing on the stone tablet standing in the northeast, which was more than 10 meters tall. When the light dissipated, a row of words appeared on it. Kui Yunhuang was also attracted by the movement over there. He put down his hand and gouged out Kui Yu. The message in his eyes was, let you go for now, but I won't let you escape easily next time. It seems that he has kept his grudge in his heart and is waiting for the opportunity to get it back. Kui Yu was really a little scared. After all, her own strength could not be seen at all, but she could not weaken her momentum by anything, so she immediately stared back. Shen Yizi nodded her forehead, feeling helpless. Be careful that someone silenced you when you were alone. That woman is obviously not a kind person, and her attack is a killing move. Kui Yu stuck out her tongue and hugged her arm. Sisters Hizzy, I still have you. I feel very safe with you. Gu Swiding walked over and glanced at the arms held by the two of them. Kui Yu subconsciously put down her hand and moved farther away from Shen Yizi. Seeing his satisfied expression, I sighed in my heart. Brother-in-law Gu was too possessive. She was a woman. In order to save her life, she simply ran to her eldest brother's side. Let's go, and have a look too. Gu Swiding held Shen Yizi's hand. Good. The 5 people came to the foot of the stone tablet and looked up. It was clearly written on the first row, Gu Swiding, the first place, contributed 1.08 million points. 1,080,000. Kui Yu exclaimed, brother-in-law Gu, you are number 1. In an instant, the people nearby cast their gazes at several people, and more of them fell on Gu Swiding. Kui Yunhuang turned back from the front and looked at Gu Swiding with increasingly intense eyes. Only a man with such a handsome appearance and amazing strength can be worthy of her. As for the woman next to him, Kui Yunhuang's eyes flashed with murderous intent. Since he was in the way of her, he shouldn't exist in this world. Unexpectedly, at this moment, she heard that annoying girl yelling, "Ah! Sisters Hizzy, you are second. You and brother-in-law Gu are indeed a pair, they are both so powerful." Kui Yunhuang's eyes moved down and landed on the second row. Second place is Shen Yizi, with a contribution of 690,000 points. Looking at the numbers on her jade plaque again, her heart suddenly turned upside down. The third place is Zhang Yuchun, with a contribution of 570,000 points. The ninth place is Zhong Wuqi, with a contribution of 480,000 points. The 31st place is Sima Lin, with a contribution of 379,000 points. Xia Ben, Min Qian Xiao, Kui Yu, all the way to the 100th place. Shen Yizi saw many familiar names on it. This stone tablet clearly shows the ranking of the contribution points of everyone who entered the secret realm. Kui Yu did not expect that she would be on the list. Although she was at the bottom, she was happy enough. Sisters Hizzy, thank you very much. If it weren't for you, I would definitely be in trouble. After thanking Shen Yizi, she started to sneer at Kui Ya again. Brother, come and thank me. If it weren't for me, How would you be on the list? Kui Ying saluted her. Yes, I would like to thank Miss Kui for her generosity. Kui Yu was amused by him and giggled. Gu Switting took Shen Yazi's jade plaque and transferred 500,000 contribution points to it without blinking. In an instant, the ranking on the stone tablet changed. Gu Switting went from first place to second place, but Shen Yazi topped the list with 1.19 million contribution points. How did you? Shen Yazi touched Gu Switting's eyes and swallowed the rest of his words. Gu Switting pinched her face. The smooth and soft touch made him unable to put it down, so he pinched her face several more times. Since this stone tablet has a ranking, it must have its purpose. It is probably related to the treasure exchange in Penglay Pavilion. The first place may have some advantages. There is no need to confirm, as long as there is a slight possibility of this, it is worthwhile for him to transfer the contribution points to her. As for whether he can be the first, what does it matter? Shen Yazi's heart felt hot, so she held his hand, tilted her head and kissed the palm of his hand, with a sweet smile. I didn't say thank you to him, because there was no need to say thank you between them. Since he wants to give it, she can just keep it. Gu Switting was so moved by her kiss that he wished he could take her to an uninhabited place and kiss her passionately. Kui Yu looked at the two of them with pink bubbles in her eyes, feeling that there was no more suitable couple in the world. Some of the people around him were shocked, envious, and indifferent, their reactions varied. Only Kui Yunhuang stared at Gu Switting and Shen Yazi, who were in such an intimate atmosphere that they could no longer accommodate a third person, with jealousy burning in their eyes. Gu Switting noticed it, and glanced at it calmly, with a sharp edge as if it had substance. Kui Yunhuang was frightened, and did not dare to look any more, and stared at the ranking on the stone tablet again. Shen Yazi. This name is really eye-catching. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 438. At this time, the originally closed Penglay Pavilion suddenly shone brightly, dyeing the surrounding white fog with brilliant colors. At the same time, an ethereal and majestic sound sounded, like a yellow bell ringing in everyone's mind. The door opened with a bang. Everyone reacted and rushed towards the door impatiently. I am afraid that if I go late, the good things will be snatched away by others. Shen Yazi and the others were not in a hurry. If things are slow, things will be smooth, and if things are urgent, things will be chaotic. We haven't figured out what's going on in Penglay Pavilion yet, so we rush in so eagerly. What if we are in danger? A few people walked over slowly. Penglay Pavilion is very high, with a total of 7 floors counting from the top. It is full of fairy style. After those people rushed in, there was no movement. Although the door was opened, it was covered with a layer of barrier, making it difficult for people to see the specific situation inside, and their spiritual consciousness could not penetrate. It seems that the only way to go is in person. Gu Switting led Shen Yazi and walked in front, followed by Zhong Wuqi and the others. The barrier only serves to block sight and consciousness, but does not block people's entry and exit. 5 people passed through easily. Shen Yazi glanced around and looked at the rows of shelves filled with goods. He felt as if he had stepped into a supermarket. The only difference is that those shelves are shining with aura, which is very extraordinary. The items on it are also full of spiritual energy and are absolutely extraordinary. The space inside is very large, and those people who came in before were scattered everywhere, like a drop of water submerged into the sea, without causing any waves. It still seems deserted here. There is a human-height hourglass on the left side of the gate, and the sand inside is leaking down. The lower half has been paved with a thin layer. Is this hourglass telling time? Gu Switting pondered for a while and said, I'm afraid that when all the sand inside leaks out, we will be excluded from the secret realm. This hourglass represents the last time they can stay in the secret realm, Penglay Pavilion to be precise. Looking at how fast the sand is leaking, they only have 2 hours left at most. 2 hours are definitely not enough to wander around this huge Penglay pavilion. Let's go, let's start from the top floor first. Goosewitting led Shenyazi towards the stairs. There is a wooden sign beside the stairs that reads, "The top 100 people can go to the second level. The top 50 can go to the third level. The top 30 can reach the fourth level. The top 10 can reach the fifth floor. The top 3 can go to the sixth floor. First place can reach the seventh floor." Shenyazi subconsciously looked at Goosewitting. "Your guess has come true. Only the first place on the seventh floor can go up." Goosewitting was a little worried at this time. If there was any danger on the seventh floor and he was not by her side. Shenyazi knew what he was thinking at a glance and shook his hand. "Don't worry, maybe there is a unique treasure waiting for me on the seventh floor. I can't wait." Kuiyu and Kuiyu are both outside the 50 ranks and can only hang out on the first floor, but they are very satisfied. The first floor is enough for them to wander around. "Sisters Hizzy, go quickly, my brother and I are also going to look for treasures." Kuiyu waved to Shenyazi and excitedly pulled Kuiying towards the shelves. When Shenyazi and the others arrived on the fifth floor, Zhonwuki nodded to them and separated from them. At the sixth floor, Goosewitting watched Shenyazi walking towards the seventh floor. Penglay Pavilion is called a pavilion, but it is actually a tower. The area of the floors becomes smaller as you go up, but the treasures inside become more and more rare. At the seventh floor, the area was only about 20 square meters. In the center stood a cylindrical table with a mirror on it. Other than that, there is nothing else here. Shenyazi walked to the table and reached out to pick up the mirror and take a closer look, but he encountered a barrier. The tadpole-like colorful runes on the barrier moved quickly, like a cover that isolated the mirror from the outside world. But the moment she touched the barrier, a burst of information about the mirror was transmitted into her sea of consciousness. The mountain and river mirror is an artifact, 8 inches in diameter, decorated with the 4 mythical animals of dragon, phoenix, tiger, and turtle, as well as the patterns of the 8 trigrams, the 12 hours, the 12 zodiac signs, and the 12 four solar terms. Holding this mirror, you can do it at any time. Teleport between 2 spatial coordinates. The price is 1.1 million contribution points. Wow! Artifact. Teleport. This Penglay Pavilion is really not simple, it even has artifacts on display. She has exactly 1.19 million contribution points, and she can still have 90,000 left after buying the artifact. Sacred artifacts are hard to come by, and this mountain and river mirror is so awesome, wouldn't it be a pity not to buy it? Besides, these contribution points were obtained for free. Shenyazi didn't feel any pain at all when spending them, so he immediately spent 1.1 million. Once you pay the contribution points, the barrier outside the mountain and river mirror will automatically disappear. Shenyazi picked up the mirror and felt a chill in his hands. When Shenyazi went down to the 6th floor and found Goosewitting, he was standing in front of 2 life-sized puppets with his hands behind his hands. The puppets are a man and a woman, with outstanding appearance and wearing a dress. Shenyazi's eyes fell on the female puppet, and his breath was suffocated. "No other, this dress is so beautiful." The moment she saw it, she couldn't help but imagine herself wearing it. "I want to wear it to get married." Goosewitting was thinking about the same thing as her. The first time he saw the men's dress, he wanted to wear it and marry her. They have become Taoist couples, and under the witness of the sky, the earth, the sun, the moon, and thousands of stars, they held a wedding between monks, but in his opinion, the marriage process that did not include a ceremony was too simple. He wanted to give her a grand wedding so that everyone could witness their union. He has been preparing secretly, and has prepared several sets of dresses in different styles, but he has never been able to decide on one. It's not that those dresses are bad, it's just that something is missing. When he saw the set in front of him, he was really surprised, and a voice sounded in his heart, "This is it." Perceiving Shen Yizi's arrival, Gu Swiding reached out and held her shoulders. "Zizi, let's buy these 2 sets of dresses." "What are you buying it for?" "The purpose is self-evident." Shen Yizi was not pretentious and readily agreed, "Okay. This dress is priced at 660,000 contribution points." The 2 people's contributions together amounted to exactly 680,000 yuan, and there was still some money left over to buy the dress. Shen Yizi was about to pay the bill when a long voice came from beside him, "Wait a minute. Behead Ya Chun." At this time, he transformed into a man again, with the corners of his mouth raised and a devilish smile. "Unfortunately, I also like this dress." Shen Yizi asked strangely, "So what? Don't you understand, first come first served? Besides, if I remember correctly, you seem to be ranked 3rd with 570,000 contribution points. You have so many contributions, do you want to buy them?" You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 439. Zhan Yuchun. Shen Yizi was still as rude to him as ever. He shook the jade token in his hand. "Sorry, I borrowed 100,000 from my apprentice." Before he finished speaking, he flashed his figure and pasted the jade token in his hand towards the barrier. The way to pay bills in Penglay Pavilion is very simple. Just stick the jade plaque on the barrier and transfer the contribution points. Zhan Yuchun is trying to steal it. His movement was too sudden. Shen Yizi didn't expect that he would be so shameless and wanted to cut off his hair in front of her, so he was a step slower. Thinking of Shen Yizi's angry appearance later, the smile on Zhan Yuchun's face became even brighter. However, the next second, the female puppet in the barrier spoke, "When more than one customer takes a fancy to the same item, the one with the highest ranking will have priority to purchase it." The smile on Zhan Yuchun's face froze. Shen Yizi was stunned for a moment, and then burst out laughing, "Ha ha ha ha." Gu Swiding couldn't help but smile. "Ah, fellow Daoist Zhan, I'm so sorry, these 2 dresses belong to me." Shen Yizi transferred his contribution points and got the dress as he wished. He added, "Some things are destined to be yours if they are yours. If they are not yours, they cannot be taken away." Fellow Taoist Zhan, do you think this is the truth? It hurts my heart. Zhan Yuchun had nothing to say. He took back the jade token with an expressionless face, glanced at Shen Yizi and the other 2, and turned to leave. Although he tried his best to appear calm, his back was still a bit stiff. Shen Yizi laughed and fell into Gu Swiding's arms, tears streaming down his face. Hearing her laughter, Zhan Yuchun paused and continued walking forward. I couldn't help scolding myself for knowing that Shen Yizi was very lucky, yet he still couldn't think of anything to do with her. No, it's just looking for abuse. Should. Gu Swiding held Shen Yizi, who was laughing so hard, and wiped the tears from her eyes with his fingertips. It took a while for Shen Yizi to calm down, and he and Gu Swiding walked to the 2 puppets. She reached out her hand with some fascination and caressed the pattern on the women's dress. Gu Swiding asked, "Would you like to try it?" Shen Yizi nodded, "Yes. Such a beautiful dress, of course you have to try it on to enjoy it." The 2 of them set up barriers, changed into formal clothes, removed the barriers and came out. After seeing each other, both of them were filled with surprise. Shen Yizi twirled up the hem of her skirt and gently turned it around in front of Gu Swiding. "Does it look good?" Gu Swiding stepped forward and put his arms around her waist, caressing her face with his big hands. "Beautiful." Shen Yizi was so excited that he couldn't suppress the smile at the corners of his eyes and brows. "You are also super handsome, so handsome that I can't close my legs. She stood on tiptoes and leaned into his ear. Goose Whitting's hand around her waist tightened suddenly, and just as he was about to take a step further, an annoying voice interrupted. Tisk, tisk, I said you two are not sensual, cuddling in broad daylight is really offensive. Who is it if it's not Zhang Yuchun? Having walked halfway, he suddenly felt, how could he leave in such a dejected state? This is not his style. So he turned back again. When Shenyazi walked out of the barrier wearing a bright red dress, he had to admit that he was so beautiful at that moment. There happened to be Goose Whitting next to him, and the scene of him and Shenyazi standing together was so dazzling. After Shenyazi said those words, Zhang Yuchun could clearly see the change in Goose Whitting's eyes for a moment. As a man, he knew very well what that look in his eyes meant. Out of some unknown reason, he opened his mouth to break the ambiguous atmosphere between the two. When Goose Whitting glanced over with murderous intent, he felt a suffocating feeling of approaching terror. However, when he looked again, Goose Whitting had already retracted his gaze. What happened in that moment just now? He was actually frightened by this guy Goose Whitting? Zhang Yuchun refused to admit it. Shenyazi glanced at him sideways. Didn't you leave? Why did you come back? Don't you think you were humiliated enough by me? Zhang Yuchun raised his eyebrows. This is the 6th floor, and I am 3rd. Why can't I be here? I haven't seen enough yet. As he spoke, he walked to a shelf and pretended to pick it up. Shenyazi snorted lightly and ignored him, returning to the barrier to change out of his dress. Goose Whitting, I have something to give you. Guess what it is? The voice was full of excitement. Zhang Yuchun, who was behind the shelves, couldn't help but pricked up his ears. Goose Whitting glanced in his direction and put up a soundproof barrier to prevent the contents of his conversation with Shenyazi from leaking out. He made several guesses in succession, but Shenyazi denied them all. Shenyazi stopped teasing him and directly took out the mountain and river mirror. This is the artifact I bought on the 7th floor. The introduction said that this mirror can teleport. I thought you happened to have the spiritual root of space. Isn't this mirror suitable for you? Come on and try it. Goose Whitting was so happy that he took the mirror over and brushed his fingers over the lines on it. Zizzy, I'd better keep it for myself. Before he finished speaking, Shenyazi glared back. You forgot, it was your birthday a few days ago, and I couldn't celebrate your birthday. This mirror is just a supplementary birthday gift for you. Don't give up. Goose Whitting's birthday is on February 25th. He himself had forgotten it, but he didn't expect that she remembered it so clearly. Although Zhang Yuchun couldn't hear the voices of the two talking, he did have a skill, he could read lips. Goose Whitting's back was turned to him, but Shenyazi was facing towards him, so he read everything she said. Unsurprisingly, he was sour. Why is there no girl who wants to give him a birthday gift? Goose Whitting brought his finger to Shenyazi's mouth. Shenyazi looked at him doubtfully. Goose Whitting's eyes seemed to be filled with heat. Didn't Zizzy ask me to claim it as its owner? Help me bite off the fingertips. The first step in recognizing the Lord is the shedding of blood. As a monk, it is extremely simple to force the essence and blood out of the body, but now Goose Whitting wants her to bite it with her own mouth. It feels a little shameful to think about it. Obviously he just bit his finger to pieces, but under Goose Whitting's gaze, Shenyazi felt that his whole body was on fire. He couldn't exert any strength when biting it, so it took him a long time to bite it. How about you do it yourself? Shenyazi looked at Goose Whitting's fingers that were wet with his own saliva, feeling extremely ashamed in his heart. Goose Whitting looked at her rosy cheeks, retracted his fingers with some regret, and forced a drop of blood from his fingertips to fall on the mountain and river mirror. The essence and blood were not reflected in the mirror. The preliminary recognition of the master has been completed. Next, it needs to be taken into the danchan to warm and nourish it day and night, and to cultivate a tacit understanding with it. It will be easy to use it when the time comes. How about it, can it really teleport? Shen Yizi asked. As the owner of the contract, Gu Swiding can receive all information about Shanhe Mirror. He nodded, it's true, but it requires a lot of spiritual energy to be used every time. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 440. After buying the Shanhe mirror and the dress, Shen Yizi and Gu Swiding only had 20,000 contribution points left together. Everything in Penglay Pavilion is extremely expensive, and even 20,000 yuan can't buy anything big, so the two of them started wandering around casually. Looking at all the goods, spiritual fruits, elixirs, magic weapons, puppets, formations, spiritual ores, there are also many things that don't look like they can be found in this world. It has gained a lot of knowledge. I don't know where these things come from. Shen Yizi was walking around, feeling inexplicably familiar. After thinking about it for a while, she suddenly remembered, isn't this just like buying something at Chen Huangji's grocery store? It's just that Penglay Pavilion is a physical store, while the grocery store is a virtual online store like Doubao. Is there any connection between Penglay Pavilion and the God Emperor Pearl? Shen Yizi was shocked by his sudden guess. The God Emperor Pearl is a treasure that my father got from the secret realm when he was in the upper realm. The specific origin is unclear. Forget it, why are you thinking so much? One day it will become clear. Shen Yizi was too lazy to get entangled. When she walked to the third floor, she found a shelf in the corner with various types of seeds on it. Each porcelain bowl contained a colorful variety, and there was a sign hanging next to it that read, various types of seeds were placed on it. High-end spiritual plant seeds are on sale for a huge price, one for every contribution, regardless of type. Shen Yizi was so pleasantly surprised that he hurriedly pulled Gu Swiding over. Green field wood, purple bay wood, green bag flower, Swihi. I didn't even read the introduction of the seeds carefully and bought them directly, 3 seeds of each kind. She has the soil in the space and can grow anything. If you buy one and plant it, it will multiply into one. But to be safe, buy 2 more. Shen Yizi bought it well, and a voice suddenly sounded next to him. Those are the seeds of high-level spiritual plants. You can't plant them if you buy them back. It's just a waste of contribution points. Miss Shen, how can you squander the contribution points given to you by Mr. Gu? It was Kui Yunhuang who spoke. After hearing this, Shen Yizi felt that there were too many things to say. Gu Swiding was about to speak, but she held her down to prevent him from talking to this inexplicable woman. If you can't do it yourself, do you think others can't do it either? Please don't judge others based on your own limited knowledge. Besides, what if I wasted my contribution points? Does it have anything to do with you having contribution points? This girl is too lenient. Zhang Yuchun laughed unceremoniously. Which earned Kui Yunhuang a glare. The contribution points I earn are for my wife and have nothing to do with anyone else. Please don't disturb me. Gu Swiding made a quick remark. These words were said to Zhang Yuchun and Kui Yunhuang at the same time. MRS. Are they already married? Kui Yunhuang stared at Gu Swiding's side face with a look of sorrow on his face. Master Gu, why are you so confused? As monks, the most important thing for me to do is to practice wholeheartedly and pursue the supreme road. When I succeed in cultivation one day, there is a woman who is worthy of you and becomes a Taoist partner with you. How can you ruin your future by yourself so early? Shen Yizi. Gu Swiding. Zhang Yuchun looked at the speechless expressions of the two people and smiled again. At almost the same time, both Shen Yizi and Gu Swiding set up soundproof barriers around them, covering only the two of them and excluding everyone else. Now it's better, no matter how annoying the flies buzz, they can't bother them anymore. The two looked at each other and smiled, continuing to select seeds. The faces of Zhang Yuchun and Kui Yunhuang, who were excluded, did not look very good. Especially Kui Yunhuang, she still had a lot of prepared words that she had not yet said. As a result, Gu Switing did not give her a chance to express herself. She stared at the backs of the two people close together, her heart boiling with rage, and she wished she could slap Shen Yizi away and take his place. 20,000 contribution points may not even be enough to buy other things, but Shen Yizi gained a lot from buying seeds. She was very happy for a while, and she forgot about the episode just now. The people on the left and right are irrelevant, so there is no need to take them to heart. Just when she spent all her contribution points, the first layer of the hourglass also ran out of sand. When the time came, a force of repulsion came, and everyone was teleported out of the secret realm. Gu Switing pulled Shen Yizi into his arms and locked her tightly to his chest. So after leaving the secret realm, the two of them were still together. As soon as Shen Yizi raised his head, Gu Switing lowered his head and kissed her. What they stepped on was a small island. It was truly small, with only an area of 2 or 3 beds. There is nothing else but some rocks and weeds on it. The waves hit the shore from time to time, and as time passed, the island was submerged little by little. When Shen Yizi noticed it, the island was almost covered by sea water. She patted Gu Switing's chest. "Okay, we should get out of here, otherwise we will be flooded." Gu Switing was still reluctant to let go, and bit her lips lightly before letting her go slightly. Shen Yizi was about to take out the sky boat when a loud cry came from far and near, and at the same time a large shadow covered him. Looking up, a large black bird more than 10 meters wide was hovering above them. Before she could react, Gu Switing held her in his arms and flew up to land on the big bird's back. "This is..." Gu Switing held her hand and stroked the big bird's back. "Xiao Man." Shen Yizi's eyes widened for a moment. How long did it take for the baby bird, which was no bigger than her palm, to grow so big? "Xiao Man," she called twice, and Xiao Man responded happily and flapped his wings even more vigorously. After a while, the dragon he pronounced the same sound, rose up, as tall as lightning, straight up to 9 days, and submerged into the clouds, taking them to appreciate the scenery above the clouds. After a while, it swooped down again, as fast as the wind, and smashed straight towards the sea. It seemed like he was deliberately showing off his skills in front of her. Shen Yizi felt like he was riding a roller coaster, but he didn't wear a seat belt, so don't be too excited. However, Gu Switing hugging her tightly behind her gave her a great sense of security. Even if her whole body was weightless and her heart was beating wildly, she was not worried about falling. Just when Xiao Man was about to collide with the sea, it suddenly flapped its wings and took them up into the air again. Shen Yizi opened his arms, looked at the sea and sky, felt the wind slipping through his fingertips, and couldn't help but opened his mouth and shouted, "Oh dash!" Gu Switing laughed. His laughter was as clear as the sky and sea in front of him. Shen Yizi leaned against his chest, feeling the slight vibration in his chest. He had never felt so peaceful before. The two of them had enough fun, and then they headed to Kunling Island.